We've met a couple times during different conferences, and we were always looking up to you and being very grateful for your work, for IEDTA, for creating this whole community, and for being the first president of IEDTA. That's true.
Yes, in the far 2001, the foundation of IEDTA.
Could you share with us just a little bit of history? What was behind this? What was the reason? And how was it even possible to create such a wonderful community?
The reason was that I was in touch with some prominent representatives of ISTDP and brief psychotherapy, more in general, starting with David Malanem, and also I got in touch with Lee McCullough, with whom I spent some research time together in Boston. I got in touch with some other former followers or students of Davanloo, like Diana Fosha. I discovered that there were quite a number of us, former students, who severed our connection with the master, or he severed his connection with each of us. And so I found that what was lacking was a group. And I thought, why not to try to create one? And that's how the idea came about, and I talked it over with Lee, with David, and they also found it was an interesting idea. So I thought to contact some of these founding members, and we decided to set the first, in absolute terms, the first EDT conference. And that was what happened in Milan in 2001. Luckily, it was a successful conference with, I think, 250 participants. Colleagues even from the US and from Europe came over without practically asking for a fee, because we were all enthusiastic about setting it up.
25 years ago, it was the first EDT conference in Europe, as we are organizing the EDT conference in Warsaw. It's wonderful that we can follow your steps and try to recreate what you already started so many years ago. Could you share a few words from your perspective, what EDT, what ISTDP, what EADP is about?
I'm happy to share this. I will skip the part of the acronyms because I don't find it really particularly meaningful. So let's stay, if we talk about Davanloo, let's stay with his acronym ISTDP, which in a way encompasses all those who came later. Has been a kind of genius in his way. And I think probably the first thing that he highlighted and that motivated him to do all what he has accomplished was that he was dissatisfied with the way psychoanalysis that he was a representative of, also because he had analysis with Ellen Deutsch, a disciple of Freud. And so, I mean, he was very much in that realm. However, he was dissatisfied with talking about feelings. And he felt that it was not enough to talk about feelings. Feelings need to be experienced. And that was his first, I think, what first motivated him to his research, that was also made possible by the advent of video technology. And he was a very special type of researcher, very solitary and relentless in re-examining the videos. And that was the way he was able to discover a new approach to dealing with defenses and structuring defenses. And I think that really he was able to dig a deep furrow between psychotherapy before him and psychotherapy with him and after him. So this ability that he created, that he developed in facilitating the experience of emotion and of impulse, also shed light on new aspects that were not seen in the same way before him. One of these new aspects is all what is around the self-sabotage, the self-sabotaging part or weight of certain defenses, especially character defenses. And so he also developed ways of dealing with the self-sabotage so as to diffuse the self-sabotaging mechanisms and make it possible to get in touch with the person's genuine will and therefore with their genuine feelings and impulses. So that's something that has been, I would say, revolutionary, also because it led him to get to a deeper understanding of human unconscious, of what goes on in very primitive ways, very primitive levels of human unconscious, like very deep grief or very intense rage and sadism, at times is necessary to reach if we want to help our patients. Not always, in my experience, but there are cases that if you don't get as deep as that, you don't manage to help people.
Yes, and some of us speaking about Habib Davanloo, that he's like second Freud, that his ideas are on the same level and enabling us to understand the human psyche even better because we can experience it in a relationship here and now. This is also not only about experiencing, not only about catharsis, but also about insight, about understanding. So the patient is understanding herself, himself, in those two triangles. You've met him personally. From your perspective, what stood out to you the most about him as a person, as a clinician, and of course as a supervisor?
Well, let me say that as a supervisor, he wasn't as good as he was great as a researcher and a theoretician and clinician, because he put a great emphasis, he thought much of the power of technique, but, and it is a bit of a paradox in my opinion with Davanloo, he did not believe as much in the power of personal aspects, culture-related, personality-related aspects. I say it is a paradox in my view because has taught us masterly to understand character defenses. So he could really see clearly into that aspect of human beings. Nevertheless, he treasured, he had the idea of, he invested a lot on the technique, wanting to have a very effective technique, and in a way left aside the more personal aspects. That's why sometimes it was difficult to be his student, because he wanted you to follow exactly the steps that he told you to follow. And there wasn't much allowance for personal aspects. So if someone was with a very different personality, different from his, it might be difficult to get on. And that's why many former students of him lost touch with him and had to go on developing professionally without Davanloo. That was a pity.
That's a pity. And that's wonderful that in Warsaw we are going to have his students from different periods. And what about you? How has this approach, ISTDP, ADP, shaped your clinical approach and broader career path? In what ways has been the most transformative for you?
Well, for sure, because I shared and share the ideal of facilitating the experience of feelings and impulse. I learned as much as I could regarding that. And the other aspect that I find a fundamental piece of teaching or of learning from my side was the way he dealt with self-sabotage. I actually remember once that he came to Milano because of a symposium I organized for him and Malan together. And so we spent time together, also privately. And we were in a cafe, and he took a piece of paper from
A napkin?
a napkin, exactly. A paper napkin. He put it on the table and made a diagram. And in the diagram, he explained in a very clear way, you see, this is the self-sabotaging part, and this is the patient's will. And you have to work in a way to increase the separation, the distinction between the two.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether he said it, but
This is
okay.
probably it's something like this. And then
Yeah.
give a choice for the patients to choose for the healthy attachment versus unhealthy, for the healthy versus unhealthy. And this is a choice. In Polish language, it's choice. To give the choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, and the choice, the patient's decision.
Yeah.
So that's precious teaching. What I found he overlooked, in my opinion, about the personal aspects, about cultural and individual personality of different therapists, that is what I tried to add in my own turn. And that's how I came to the idea, to the concept that is mostly an operational concept of the 9 therapeutic ingredients. Because the idea is, if we can learn all the bricks, all the pieces of the puzzle of a psychotherapy, then we can decide more freely which to implement and when to implement. It is a way of trying to make the technique more flexible and suitable to different therapist personalities.
So it's more flexible, as I understand.
Yes, a variable structure, if you will. So you can change the structure. As long as you don't miss out elements that are necessary, you can match them together in different ways.
Could you share with us those 9 puzzles?
One of them is about working with the real relationship. And by real relationship, I mean the personal human aspects of therapist and patient beyond symptoms, beyond professional aspects. For instance, the fact that you wear a jacket and I wear a jumper is probably negligible in this case, but may still mean something. And anyway, even if it doesn't mean anything in particular, it conveys something. So because I wear a jumper, I convey something to you that is probably a bit different than if I wore a jacket. And so there is unspecific factors that are in the room. I found that calling attention to them empowers the relationship and therefore facilitates the work with defenses, the work with anxiety. And of course, 2 other ingredients are defense work, defense restructuring, and anxiety work that I call anxiety regulation. And then we have another ingredient that is frequent mirroring, active mirroring, that is germane to working with the real relationship in a way. Because by real mirroring, I don't mean or only mirroring symptoms or defenses or anxiety. I can mirror your jacket, for instance, that is totally unspecific, but still catalyzes the interaction, catalyzes the relationship. Because I really put a premium on fostering the real relationship. I find that if you foster the real relationship, you need less of an effort when it comes to restructuring defenses, to regulating anxiety, and all the rest. Another ingredient is self and other restructuring, the restructuring of interactive patterns of the person with other significant people in their lives. So we not only address the inner representation of the relational pattern, but also the actual way that people behaves with their significant others. These are some of the ingredients. There are 9. I would need a list to go over them, but this will happen for sure in Warsaw. I will go over them both in the pre-conference workshop and in the conference itself.
Yeah, sounds like what you just mentioned are working in the realm of the resistance against emotional closeness. So it's about intimacy and the real relationship, like person to person, heart to heart. This is what Rosette is teaching us about frontal defenses, and that is the primary goal of the therapist, to help patients challenge and get rid of the frontal defenses. It's about seeing each other as a real human beings. So yeah, I understand. What I hear about ISTDP here in Poland, this is about closeness, real intimacy, and curiosity. That's exactly what you said. And being curious, that's one of the most important factors. And of course, we are going to look into more of them once we meet in Warsaw. It's lovely. Thank you. I'm just thinking also about your opinion about the way, what do you think, how we can help to grow and to develop a new generation of psychotherapists in this model of teachers, supervisors? Because I know that once you've been in IEDTA, you created as an IEDTA a certain way of teaching, that if you'd like to study ISTDP, you have to go through a process that is called co-training. And then if you'd like to teach others, then you need to assist, then you need to look how your other colleagues are also teaching the process. What do you think about this approach?
I think it is absolutely crucial that people who want to train in one of the EDTs work with video recording and get supervision on video recorded cases, because the type of supervision you can give on video recorded cases is different from the supervision one can give only on the narrative of sessions. So that's for sure. I think it is important and necessary to watch the cases by more expert, more experienced psychotherapists, like clinicians, like teachers and supervisors. Then I'm not an institutional person, particularly. So I don't have a very sound, very precise opinion of how many years and for how many hours this should happen. I think, yes, one needs to practice with different clinical cases and get supervision on video recorded sessions. And in my experience, it has been useful for those who have been my students and who have later wanted to become teachers and supervisors. It's been useful for them to be in the core training with me as co-supervisors. I think it's a very nice thing, and it allows to choose also the type of teacher or supervisor that you feel you get on well with, because of these personality factors that, in my opinion, are very important. So it's not a pure rational, mathematical, technical thing. It is also very human, and therefore you need to get on at least well enough with your teacher or supervisor on a human level.
It's like apprenticeship model to follow your master and then to give back to the community. And now we've got generation after generation, so we can tell that you are the first generation of supervisors, and we've got second, third, and now it's growing even generation number 4. This approach, Habib Davanloo, ISTDP, ADP approach, EDT approach is growing and growing. And I'm curious, from your perspective, as it's so many years since you are in this area, in this field, once you're looking ahead, where do you see this approach, ISTDP, evolving in the next years? What developments or trends are you most excited about?
I cannot see the future, but what I see at present is that the EDTs, ISTDP and the others, are growing in general and developing, and they are also developing in different directions. And something I noticed was that not only I started very early to lay an emphasis on real relationship aspects, but in time, in the years, I noticed that almost all of the colleagues increased that emphasis on the human relationship aspects that, of course, were, by the way, were present also because he had an incredible empathy and an incredible intuition into human feelings. He wouldn't have been the master he has been. The thing is that he didn't say it. He talked about technique because that was his view of things. And so it was necessary, or there was room for someone else to address, to emphasize that other aspect. But I see that now almost all colleagues have made room for that in an explicit way, not only leaving it, implicit, because if we do psychotherapy, of course, we value the relationship. But in my opinion, it makes a difference whether you keep it implicit or you spell it out and say, look, paying attention to the human aspects and to the real relationship is as important as being technically.
Yeah, it's a very important point also once we are having those discussions about is AI going to take away our jobs, these large language models like ChatGPT, are they going to take away our jobs? So if we would be looking at the ISTDP as a technical approach, not the same as you put emphasis on the human heart-to-heart relationship. Yes, that's what I understand, that your approach, your emphasis is more about this human touch, human real relationship.
I agree with the conclusion you drew about my position. Actually, what is healing basically are two things: emotional experience of conflicting, painful feelings and impulses, and sharing this emotional experience with another human being. And I doubt that I can perform the role of a human being. It can imitate very nicely, but cannot give the human presence that I think is of the essence to make someone feel that one is not alone, that there is another human being that is closely connected, and there is a possibility of understanding the feeling and sharing the feeling. I think this is something AI cannot do.
And got deja vu in over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago. There was a conference organized by Robert Neborski, Josetti, and other colleagues in California. He answered exactly your words, that this being empathetic witness and being able to be in a moment one's patient is sharing his painful emotions is one of the most healing moments of the therapy, and allowing it to be as long as possible. So there are really deep emotions here and now in presence of the empathetic and intimate relationship with psychotherapist. Yes. When you are looking at your journey or perspective that maybe you'd like to share with our EDT colleagues, is it something that maybe they might not already know about you? Is it something that you would like to share with them from your perspective, from your life?
Yes, actually, this prompts me to disclose a piece of news that I am about to publish a new book in English that is not a psychotherapy book, even though it partly is. It is entitled The Musical Cure, and it is a kind of autobiographic novel, and therefore it contains also some bits of the history of my professional career, and therefore of my having met David Malanem and studied with him, and Habib Davanloo and John Bowlby, and therefore it is written in a joking and more light type of style, because it is not a scientific book, but it contains perhaps some interesting information. And also it contains music, because I'm a fan of the traditional French author and poet and singer Georges Brassens, and therefore I include some quotations from his songs to highlight some emotional aspects of what I'm talking about.
You're also a musician, and we know you also playing guitar. And hopefully maybe we'll be able to convince Alan Kalpin to come over from States, because he also, during the last dinner at Robert Nembowski's house, brought his unfolding guitar. He unfolded his guitar and he was playing, and we will be singing along. So it would be wonderful to have more of us playing and singing together. And also we are thinking about having this kind of a crowd togetherness with some maybe songs. We'll see. Yeah, it will be fun. It will be fun for sure. Would like to share with us maybe just anecdote or maybe a little bit of your new book? Anything you'd like to share with us regarding your relationship with Habib, with David Malanem, or anything that you'd like to just share? An anecdote from this book?
What I can just hint at is the incredible development of my relationship with David Malanem, because we didn't know each other before I went there, and it took me quite some time to become his clinical associate. And then gradually our relationship developed professionally and then also personally at a very deep level. So that is a rather unique experience for me. And the whole thing had started after reading, because I read his book, Individual Psychotherapy and the Science of Psychodynamics. And that struck me as the light of a lighthouse in the darkness, because for the first time I understood, I thought anyway, I was understanding his language, where he used a very everyday type of language, but was able to express very subtle concepts. And so it was simple and clear. And I loved it so much. I thought, this is my man. I want to learn from him.
I'm just thinking aloud, because this is something new for us to learn about your new book that it will be soon published in English. You know that we facilitated publishing of a couple books, translated, helped to be published regarding mastering ISTDP, reaching through resistance, and soon there will be a new book from John Rathaus, Jonathan Antis, and also another book from Josette. So maybe, who knows, your book will be possible to publish also in Polish language for our Polish colleagues. What do you think about it?
Of course, I would be happy if someone wants to translate it into Polish. I cannot do it, but it will be great to have it translated into Polish. I am a language lover, and I would love to speak many different languages, but of course it is possible to some extent only.
Once you speak language, your native language, English language, and also language of love, once you are in a relationship with your patients, but also language of music, that's probably enough. Polish will help you. Polish Association, ISTDP Association, there are so many eager young minds that they would like to also support and help. So if there will be any possibility that it is possible to translate, then we will be really happy to do it for you and for our ISTDP community, EDT community. So we do hope that we will be able to meet in Warsaw. There will be a workshop with you before the conference. Maybe if there will be time for you to join us for the travel around Poland, then we will be happy to show you couple places in Poland after the conference, who knows? Anything you'd like to tell to encourage our colleagues, other psychotherapists, clinicians to join us at this conference and also at your workshop?
What I will say is that I think the participants that I know that will present, the presenters at this conference, are all very interesting and knowledgeable colleagues. And so I think the plate is really rich. And what I most like is that it is a composite type of author. It isn't only one way of looking at things, but more ways of looking at things are represented. And I think that is very teaching, especially for colleagues who are younger and are still trying to figure out exactly what they want to do when they grow up.
Yeah, because that's the most important that I remember. Over 10 years ago, we had this first interview. It's still available on the website. When I asked you about the one advice you can give to a young psychotherapist, and your advice was to find your own voice, not to. Do you remember? Do you agree with
Yeah.
this still?
And I still agree with that.
Yes, and to do it, it's only way how to do it by knowing different ways, different supervisors, to see different tapes, and then to find your own unique style, to be able to be in touch, very intimate with your patients, to be curious about their lives.
I think you have the right type of enthusiasm with this conference.
Yes, we are so enthusiastic and happy. This is something that we've been looking for many years to enable our colleagues in Poland to witness, because frankly speaking, to fly over to States to see the conference in Boston, in California, it's quite expensive for us. And then if we are able to host you and be grateful to your generosity that you are coming over to Poland to teach us, then it's the best what we can do for the community, for our psychotherapists and colleagues, that some of them really don't know about ISTDP, and then it will be probably first time for them to see how is it to be active as a therapist.
Great.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And we are looking forward to see you soon in Poland once again.
So am I. Bye.